August 14 occurrence. Nobody's been paid anything on that case, and there's the chances of that case surviving governmental immunity ultimately, in my opinion, based on my experience, is not very good, and I am wholeheartedly against bills that create more immunity for governmental entities. I understand, but here I'm talking about what's best for the residents of the city individually, the citizens generally, not what's good for a municipality. I just think that there's enough protection out there right now for governments that we do not need this. And I did speak to our state representative today, Robert Wittenberg, about this. He is not a sponsor of this bill. He also does not think that it's warranted based on what the law currently is. So I do not support this bill. I don't see that there's any evidence that it's, we've been in business for a long time as a city, and other than that one rain event, and then the other claims we had arising out of some sewers a few years ago, this is not a big problem in Huntington Woods. I'm sorry, I don't, and I can tell you right now, if you had a catastrophic rain event and you had this law, you're still going to have litigation over it. It's not going to change it. I do not like these type of blanket immunity bills. I do not believe they serve the public's best interest. It may be a short-term feel-good thing for the city. Yeah, we protected the city. No, you're not. In my opinion, I do not like these, and I will not support this.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, I am going to vote in favor. One thing I do like about it is that this does provide a specific threshold, of rain per hour, or in a continuous 24-hour period. And I think, the other issues, I generally agree with what Commissioner Olsman said, in that, we definitely want to be pro-resident here, but keeping in mind that if we were to lose this case, any settlement that could happen would potentially be placed right on the resident's tax bill to turn around and pay the money back.
But this bill isn't going to affect this case.
Totally understand that, but I'm just saying, like, going forward, if we ever saw a large settlement, and residents think, well, this is a great win, if we're not insured for the loss, it goes right on the tax bill and they end up paying it all back. So it's
well, we are insured, but the limits
right
that are made available to
right,
us
and so that
are inadequate.
That's exactly my point. So so that was my only comment on it. Thank
you. Thank you. I'm Steve Gold. I'm a resident. In my previous position as the director of the Macomb County Health Department, I had a good deal of experience with city and county perceptions of flooding events and the data that went into them. And while it's very attractive to set thresholds at certain amounts of rain per hour, the likelihood of flooding is also a function of how saturated the city is. And if you've had a steady rain for a few days, then a very light rain might supercharge your sewer system and you get flooding. On the other hand, if it's been dry for months, you could have a pretty significant rain event and the ground just soaks it up and it doesn't run off. So it's attractive, but perhaps not entirely feasible to say that a certain amount of rain in a 24-hour period is a good threshold that correlates with the likelihood of flooding.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like the bill because it at least sets standards. And I would like to see the attorneys that oppose it challenge the bill once it's adopted. But at least we've got some standards to begin with. Perhaps they won't stand, but there's got to be, the public was extremely angry, and the group that they blamed was the city.
Well, that's right. They were angry, and this bill erodes rights of citizens at the expense of, I'm just telling you that, first of all, we already have, and Carol will agree with me, that the climb uphill is very steep. And this, the immunity is already there, and like I said, I just do not, if you're concerned about the citizens and accountability to the citizens, this isn't the answer.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Carol. In your legal opinion of this bill, what do you think of the protection for residents? Does it make it more helpful to them or less? And then I have another question for you as well. On page 4, it says, at or near the affected area or within the sewage disposal system service area. And they're talking about the area where it's measured and impacted. To me, that seems like a very vague description. And then it goes on to say, an overflow or backup is not a sewage disposal system event if any of the following was the substantial proximate cause. Who determines this cause?
That is actually, the only thing that's suggested for change is what boldface.
Right.
So the rest is, well, the court determines proximate cause, but the rest is already in the statute. I understand what they're trying to do. It's similar to the sidewalk cases, establish some kind of measurement and say, okay, if you're below this, you're okay. If you're not, you're not. I mean, this is a decision for you to make. I don't know how they came up with the numbers. How do you measure 1.7 inches of water? I don't know how you do that. Or 3.3 inches of water.
Right, what if it
And
was
what's the
1
generally
point-
recognized and accepted method?
Yeah.
Whatever method you use, somebody might say, no, you should have used this instead, or you should have put it in a different spot in the affected area. So, I mean, I guess my thing is, I don't see where this really clarifies anything. Okay, yes, it does at least try to start setting some limits that you can work within, but I think you can still make the arguments under the existing statute.
It's
But I will tell you,
Superfluous.
most communities are supporting this, so,
What
and
do
the
you do? They
attorneys
support
handling
the
your sewer
sidewalk.
case are recommending.
They support the sidewalk liability issues too, and that's all fine till a resident falls and breaks their hip. I'm sorry, this is not, in my opinion, not good government. Accountability to the citizens is good government. So this is not, look, the fact that there's a lawsuit, yeah, there's a lawsuit involving the 14 event. That doesn't mean anybody's gonna get paid, of course, other than defense counsel. But I mean, which there's nothing wrong with, I like Johnson Rosati. But there's a big uphill climb, and this does not do anything else except just a further attempt to erode rights of citizens, and I would not support that.
Well, I guess anything related to governmental immunity
I do not
erodes,
support it.
Jules will not support.
Well, that's the
So-
concept that the king does no wrong.
Right, right.
Sorry, I think we're witnessing that era where it's not
Well,
true.
yes, the king does do wrong, but unfortunately,
do
the king
anything.
can't always pay for everything he does
Right.
wrong, so that's where it comes from.
So I agree with Commissioner Rosel's the fact that he pointed out that there is a lawsuit and there's a settlement or a payment, it comes back to the taxpayers. We all have to pay for it.
Beyond a
Right.
certain amount, correct.
Right. So with that in mind, and I just see a very vague and unclear language in here that I'm not comfortable with, and that 1.7 number and the 3.3 number, it just seems so arbitrary to me unless there's a reason for it. What if it was 1.695? I mean, are you serious, with the arbitrary number?
I mean,
But, so this is,
that's the downside of setting a
Right.
number.
right, so I'm not totally comfortable with saying, yes, we support this just because, our trade organization says that we should and all these other municipalities are for it. I want to really understand what does this mean to our residents, and the fact that your legal advice is saying that it doesn't really change.
I mean, I think you're still making the arguments. You're making the basic arguments. Is your system, was it working properly at the time this occurred? Is it something outside of your system that resulted in the backup?
When I spoke to Representative Wittenberg, he told me this bill has come up repeatedly in the past. This isn't something, some new great thing that's surfaced here. And like I said, the immunity is already there. I do not, like I said, I do not, I remember the meetings after the 14 event. People were not happy. And my concern here is accountability to the residents. And like I said, it's already almost impossible for anybody to get anywhere in these cases. This isn't going to change it.
Well,
It
I think part of the problem is the fact that there really is not very much case law on this portion of the statute when the amendment was done to add this.
Well,
And so now you've had all these series of cases and a lot of them are being settled. So you're still not really getting the case law developed on this particular issue. So I guess this is an attempt to say, well, let us try to put some parameters on it.
At the beginning.
Yeah, a beginning. I don't know if it's a good approach or a bad approach.
well, if Representative Wittenberg liked it, he would have told me it's a good bill and we should support it. He does not support it because he shares my view that there's already a very difficult climb up the hill, and this doesn't change anything. It's not likely going anywhere anyway. So
Mr. Mayor?
I'm
Do we,
opposed.
do we have any idea how fast this is moving through the
No,
House?
it's getting a lot of support.
Yeah, I mean, the
It's getting a
bill,
lot of support.
Mr. Mayor,
From
the
who?
bill sponsor is the chair of the committee. So
Wow.
he's likely to give his own bill a hearing, I can assure you of that, for sure.
And I know a lot
I'm
of other
noticing a lot of the
municipalities have
names on this bill happen to control other areas of the legislature that I think this bill may get at least out of committee into the floor in the House for a vote. I can't say what'll happen in the Senate, but I know that the Water Resource Commissioner absolutely supports this. I mean, with a combined system, I mean, unless they're gonna, state legislature gonna pay to separate it, they're trying to say, look, we recognize that in these extreme rainfall events, despite your best efforts, like we're going through now, replacing pipe, lining pipe, bursting pipe, doing all of these things, despite everything you do to increase flow, having a combined system and that much water in that period of time, there's nothing that can be done to prevent it from backing up into folks' basements. They recognize that. And I mean, rainfall can be measured. It was measured in the 2014 event. The National Weather Service measures it. There's devices all around that measure rainfall. Somebody came up with this number, probably based on capacities of combined systems and what they feel maximum flow rates are. And I doubt somebody just wrote down random numbers in a bill. I'm sure it's based on probably consultation with the Water Resource Commissioner, who's been a big proponent of this bill every time it's come up in the legislature and has given testimony on it. So that's likely where it developed. But I think that there's nothing we can do beyond what we're doing. And if there is another rainfall, 150-year rainfall, 15 years from now, which wouldn't surprise me, we're going to be right back where we were in 2014. And we just can't buy a policy big enough or afford a policy big enough to ensure this kind of loss, which means, the residents can sue and say, yeah, we got a great settlement, and then it's going to go right as a special assessment on their tax bill, and we're going to take it right back. So I just don't, other than the attorneys, the citizens are losers. The attorneys are winners, but the citizens are losers.
But Joe, first of all, that hasn't happened. The only payout that's occurred in this city, and city manager will correct me, was a few years ago there was a problem where there was an area of the city where there were some tree roots and some issues. Where under the current statute, the claims were paid to some homes that were damaged because they met the standard for when the city would be liable. And the city did not shirk its responsibility. It did pay those people. But the statement that what's supporting this is pure speculation on your part, candidly, for somebody as knowledgeable as you are, somewhat naive about what goes into putting legislation forward and how it gets, advanced and so forth, that it's based on an arbitrary number, as Michelle says, that we're not doing anything good here with it. Nothing purposeful. It's unlikely going anywhere, and I don't see what our endorsing it makes one bit of difference, particularly if our state representative is not supporting it.
You know the number's arbitrary, Commissioner?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, but you're saying that it's not, and I'm just saying that I have some idea how legislation works.
So do I.
Want to take a look at the no-fault bill and talk about that and so forth? We don't need to go there.
Legislation.
Want me to chime in and then debate, because I think it's.
Mr. Mayor, I would just call the question at this point under Robert's rules and call for a vote.
Let me just explain where I'm coming from then before I call the question. There certainly is a lot of questions about this. I don't feel comfortable putting my support behind a bill that I have questions about and don't know enough information about, especially one that our own representative has questions on. So we can always express our intent later when we find out more information, but I'm just not comfortable at this point. So, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'd like to request Jim Nash to attend and speak on this bill at the next meeting, and I'd like to have this vote, the bill tabled till the next meeting. So we can get some idea where the numbers come from. I'd also like to know how much we have spent in legal fees during this period of time. Since
We haven't spent anything. It's coming out of the MMRA policy. The city hasn't spent a dime, but the policy's being eroded. I do know that. I know the exact number.
How much is the exact number?
Well,
that's
these
been
were
eroded?
things discussed in closed session that
Right.
I don't think we should be
Right.
discussing in an open meeting,
yeah, I don't
Mr.
think we
Mayor.
should be
I think
discussing
we're
the
treading
lawsuit.
on some very shaky ground here.
I still would like to move the table to the next one. Get some facts.
Do we have a second?
Isn't there already a motion?
There
on the
is.
table?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, not hearing a second, I'm going to call the question on approval of this, support of this, of House Bill 4692. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Aye.
No.
Okay, motion fails.
Wait a minute, did you say nay or aye?
Said aye to nay.
He meant
I
no,
just said no.
negative.
That's a
Negative,
double
that's
negative, so we could talk about how that goes.
Take a roll call vote.
Item number 6, matter of consideration of entering into an agreement with Marine City Nursery in the amount of $16,280 for the fall tree planting program.
Support?
Second?
Call the question.
Any public comment? None. Any comments or questions from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7 is a approval of the Huntington Woods City Commission standards and policies.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we adopt the policy as set forth.
Second.
Any public comment, questions? Comments or questions from the commission? Pro Tem.
I do represent the city through your selection at the Michigan Municipal League and SEMCOG. I do an extensive amount of travel. For the last 20 years, I've used the city car. The mileage on the city car, which is from 2012 currently, is 41,000 miles. We are driving less than 6,000 miles a year. I would like that if the commission commissioners don't use the car, I would like to be able to use the car with some logic as to how the selection is made. As to, normally it's been who travels the furthest or based on need or things like that. This car sits most of the time not being used. From a financial point of view, it would be smart to get rid of it. From a practical point of view, the city needs it. There are many people, especially on the youth programming and recreation, that use it. But from a dollar and cents point of view, it is cheaper to use the city car than to reimburse someone, even at the low level that we use. So if we're looking at saving money, this is a way of doing it. So all I would ask is that you consider allowing at least whomever represents MML and SEMCOG to also be able to use the car.
Any other comments? As I told you, Mayor Protem, we will continue that discussions. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Hey.
Motion carries. Item number 8 is the City Commission agenda. This is a discussion on possible revisions to the agenda and the meeting policies and procedures. We're going to start with the agenda, though.
Yeah, I guess that, after our discussion last time, I put a couple things together for you to look at. The difference on the agenda from what you typically do now, we do have the roll call in there. And we also have incorporated back the consent agenda, which I think is an easy way for you to approve the minutes, the warrant, all that kind of stuff. Also, based on the discussion, I deleted the city commissioner comments at the end. And we've worked on the language a little bit at the bottom, clarifying that, just public rights. So, up to you.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to clarify, under the consent agenda, the prior meeting minutes, the warrant, and then minutes of all of the other boards and
Yep,
committees,
yep,
that would all
yep,
be lumped under that.
yep.
Great. Got it.
Anything that's just a routine
Sure.
action that you take every month, that's why I have the blanks there.
Great.
And any commissioner can pull anything out of that.
Correct.
Discussion and just move to the regular agenda.
Correct.
Right. Yeah, I support this, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a good thing. I think it formalizes some practices and streamlines some others. So I don't have an issue moving adoption of these revised meeting policies and procedures.
I'll second that.
Any public comment?
I found it unusual that we allow county commissioners, elected officials' remarks on items that are not on the agenda. And at the same time, we do not allow elected officials from the city to comment on items that are not on the agenda.
I would have to agree with that. I know we discussed, as far as a record-keeping process, the city commission's comments would be more of a shorter, just what topic was talked about rather than the entire comment, but I didn't realize we were talking about total elimination of city commissioner comments, and I don't know that I'm in favor of that.
Well, let me give you an example. One of the comments I wanted to make is Monday, October 21st from 1 to 7 p.m., the Red Cross will be collecting blood and doing a blood drive in the Huntington Woods Library. Now, if people are watching, that's a short announcement, but you can't make it the way this has now been written. I find it very valuable that when Commissioner Zach spoke, there were 6 different points she made, and they were in the minutes. When it came to the commissioner's comments, it said Commissioner Jenks' comment. made comments. There very frequently are items that are not on the agenda, and so there would be no opportunity for an elected official to speak, the way this is prepared.
Mr. Mayor, generally, the commissioner comments, there's nothing of any, major issue, and I would think that if there was some bubbling issue that somehow didn't get amended onto the agenda, the city manager would bring it up under the city manager's report. We could discuss it then and ask questions of the city manager, and if we want to let somebody know about a blood drive or a rec center event, to the city manager, it can be emailed ahead of time, and she can make those announcements under the city manager's report. I'm not under any delusion that folks are at home nestled around their TV set watching hanging on every word we say here. I can assure you of that. If maybe it's good for insomnia, help you sleep, but I don't think that that's the case here. And so if there are issues, we could just pass them on, and the city manager could make the announcements under the manager's report. And if there was a hot issue that needed to be discussed, we just amend the agenda and add it on there, and we can discuss it then. I don't know. The commissioner comments at the end, to me, aren't mission critical, and if they were mission critical, we'd be amending the agenda to discuss it.
Any other comments?
In the spirit of time management, as a working parent, I do have a comment on this. I do appreciate what you share with us, Jeff, or Commissioner Jenks. But I think for announcements such as those, you would get more out through our newsletter, through social media, through the Herald, through, those types of publications. I don't know that a lot of people watch the commission meetings. They pay attention to certain issues that they're passionate about, or they may come to an event or to a commission meeting. But I think, by the end of our meetings, I'm ready to end it. And I think to your comment about, other elected officials having the floor, if there is an issue that's important to you, we would obviously be more than happy to put that on the agenda and spend time on it, talking about it. But I just think that you're going to get a much higher return for your efforts. Yes, that's one way of communicating, but I think there's more effective ways of getting that sort of news out to the public. So it's just, my perspective on this is just better time management of, trying to get home and trying to sneak in a goodnight kiss before my daughter goes to bed and have to make her lunch for the next day. So I do appreciate where you're coming from, but that's my perspective on it.
Well, this was a call that my wife received from the American Red Cross about 15 minutes before I left. And this is an event that occurs next Monday. So, and no one has seen, I don't know, has anyone in here seen any information on a blood drive? So sometimes there is advantage.
Can you include it in Friday's e-blast, please, Amy? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And social media.
We will have commissioners' remarks at the end of this meeting. We haven't changed.
Our last meeting with those, yeah. Potentially, we'll see how the vote goes.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Item number 9 is the policies and procedures for all boards and commissions, not just the city commission.
A little bit tricky.
Yeah.
Went through and tried to group things so, based upon the concept that we were going to try to have some, uniformity here between everybody. So this is my stab at it. I'm looking for any comments you have or anything that sticks out to you that you think should be done differently.
Well, I think, are you asking
Everyone.
us now?
Yes.
Do we want a motion on the floor before we discuss it?
Yeah, I would move that we approve the proposed changes to the policy and procedures for commissions and boards for the city of Huntington Woods in the the spirit of creating a sense of uniformity among what we do.
I'll second that.
Any public comment? Commissioner?
Okay, I think that as long as the chairperson has the authority, which they do, to allow someone to speak or let them speak longer than, the purpose, this has come up before, the purpose of time limits is contrary to what sometimes seems like, well, that's just so people keep, won't talk as much. No, it's to encourage more people to participate. And, we've seen that here occasionally. The last time was the drag queen controversy, and, you want people to feel that they can speak, and they did. But it's good to have some rules of the road to follow, and as long as the chairperson, especially, for example, on the planning commission, where sometimes you get an issue that takes a little bit more discussion, so the chairperson has the authority to allow it. The goal is to get the maximum amount of input from citizens, and also that the point of fact is, as the expression goes, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. Less can sometimes be more and more effective. I mean, you're not going to say the same, and having some rules is a good idea. It preserves the decorum, allows people to follow the proceeding better than if one person in one corner of the room is chortling in and somebody else, it gets a little bit just out of control. And this is much better to have. Look, let's be blunt, most meetings don't. None of this ever comes into play. But it is a good idea to have rules and procedures in place that are fair to everybody, allow everybody to do it. I support it. I think it's a good idea.
And, a good example of that is sometimes you'll have a representative come on behalf of a group of people, and that's a perfect situation where the chair would say, all right, I'm gonna let you speak 10 minutes, because you're representing this large group or something like that, but still keep the meeting moving.
I have one question to
Yeah.
that, since you brought up that particular issue. If
Okay.
a person is representing a group, how do they need to identify that and identify the group? How do you then control the rest of the group?
They usually do. They usually will stand up and say, I am representing this group. You can ask, because, otherwise, because they're basically asking you for more time to speak because they're representing the group.
And if
So-
other members from that group come forward, then it's the chairman's position to say your
Well,
chosen speaker is.
That's where you try to control the meeting in terms of, one of the points of public, the public participation is, there isn't any need for 200 people to stand up and say the same thing.
Correct.
Okay? So, in that situation, you're encouraging the public, if someone has spoken on behalf of a group, you're encouraging the public to say your representative has spoken on your behalf, unless you have something different to add. We understand your position on this.
How about the, no person shall be allowed to address the commissioner or board more than once on an agenda item? Can that be, can you add, I generally agree with that,
Yeah.
but can it be at the chairperson's?
We could make that at the chair's discretion
Because
if you'd
there-
like, but that is typically the rule.
It is.
Because otherwise you get too much back and forth going.
But there are times when that does
Okay.
happen, and
Or you've got
the
an
chairperson
expert
might want to allow it, especially in a smaller group situation, where
Okay, let me find.
one person is there, and after some feedback from other people or the commission, they have something else that is good to be added to the conversation.
All right, got it.
I don't know if everyone agrees with me on that.
I have no issue with that.
Yeah. We don't want to be so rigid that it's
Yeah.
It can.
ridiculous to have a conversation.
But I think you do want to state the rule that way,
Sure.
so that people understand they're supposed to get up and say what they have to say.
Yep.
I agree with
So-
that.
Yep. Mr. Mayor, I will say, before I was on the commission, I did go to the Drag Queen Storytime Commission meeting for that reason, and I really appreciated knowing, as a participant of the public, knowing, yeah, there's 5 people ahead of me, they have such and such time, I've got a 15-minute wait, So as a participant, it was the certainty that gave me more confidence in staying rather than running home for bedtime. So I really agree with this policy on the time limit with the flexibility of the chairperson.
Yeah, I mean, that just validated what, Commissioner Olsman said about the time limit makes people more confident that they're
Exactly.
going to get an opportunity to speak. And I think that this is great that we're standardizing it across all of our boards. We had a resident raise this concern. We've addressed it promptly at our next meeting, and that's great. What I'd like is each new board and committee member that's appointed, when they receive their welcome letter, they receive this in the mail, just so they have it as a reference. So if we could just, the clerk can do that, or whomever, once we do these appointments, then they just have a little idea of how the meeting will be run. It can be kind of intimidating when you're appointed to a board or committee, especially something more formal like a planning commission or zoning board, to kind of, they have a little bit of understanding of how the meeting will operate. So,
We'll make it part of the orientation packet.
great.
And I think the prohibition on speaking only once is only in one location, but I'm gonna cross-check that. And then one other thing I added to this, which I don't know if you looked at, because I wasn't sure how you wanted to go. When you decide what your agenda is, I set it up where if somebody wants to put something on the agenda, they submit it to the city manager, and then the city manager approves it through the mayor, which seemed like the proper way to do it. Is that okay?
I do believe the charter
charter-
allows for two commissioners to
Right.
put something on the agenda, even
Okay.
if the city manager and the mayor don't want it on there.
Okay.
So we should, that's,
I'll
that
have
charter.
to,
we
I'll
need
have to
keep
put that in
there.
then too. Okay. I'll make that change too.
We should, once this is adopted, we should make this as an agenda item for
Yep.
all the existing board and
Oh, okay.
commissions.
Right.
For it to be presented to them.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor of, the, policy and procedures as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Diversity and Inclusion Committee.
Yep, we are getting some applications or citizen interest forms from residents. And before the committee gets formed, I thought it would be helpful for me to decide what city staff member would be best suited to work with the committee, would be for the commission to give work on the goals and objectives for the committee, so that as people come on board, they know what's expected of them, and to work with each of the commissioners, find out what are priorities for you, talk to other cities about other committees similar to this and what their goals and objectives are, and then bring that back to the city commission prior to the board being formed, or I'm sorry, prior to the committee being formed, so that we're all in agreement on what the committee's expectations are, what their goals are, and what their next steps would be.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the Diversity and Inclusion Committee be held in abeyance and considered inactive pending further review by the staff, and also benchmarking and considering how other cities have addressed diversity and inclusion so that we can gather more information.
Second.
Any public comment?
Thank you. When the commission, excuse me, I'm off today. I was sick this morning. When the commission approved the formation of the committee for a 9-month period in August, I believe it was with the understanding that the supporting material that was provided at that time would be the nature of the committee that we were forming. That material that I prepared included a charge that had 3 components: to seek ways for Huntington Woods to represent itself, to effectively present itself to underrepresented communities as a desirable place to live, to seek ways for Huntington Woods to become more inclusive and welcoming, and to present the City Commission with findings and recommendations for action regarding those things. So that seemed to me to be a pretty good charge, and I thought that the Commission's acceptance of it was a validation of that. So that's one comment. My second comment would be that that the Commission has received, I believe, 8 applications from citizens on the basis of the material that was presented. So we have 8 applications for a committee that was intended to have 11 members. So I think that we're already doing, we've seen an active interest on the part of the citizens with the material as presented. The suggestion that that the city's values be represented, I think certainly the city's values should be represented by any organized unit or body that's associated with the city. And I was surprised at the implicit suggestion that some of those charges were in conflict with the city's values. I would hope that they would not be. My final two other things, with the Commission's permission and understanding, we did launch some events in August to celebrate Welcoming Week, and those were successful events and appreciated as far as all the feedback that I got was concerned. I don't know if the report was shared, so you've seen that. So I think that our tentative toe in the water activities to address some of these things have already been successful, which is an indication, I think, that we may be going in the right direction already. My final comment would be that if the Commission, in its wisdom, does decide to hold the committee pending and in abeyance, that you would put a time limit on that period of time, because there are citizens, including myself, who are eager to work on these issues, and we would like to have the opportunity to serve the city in that fashion.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, I'm Kevin Withane. I'm a resident here. I actually attended one of Steve's events and applied to be in this commission. A few months ago, I remember there were some other positions that were available in the council, and I said to my wife, shall I do this? I'd like to get more involved in this community. We've only been in this community about just over a year now. And she was like, no, because you travel a lot. You don't have a lot of time. And then I literally got back from a very long trip in Asia. And Steve had something out on next door, and there wasn't anybody going to go to his food cultural event. And I was sat there, and I was really, really tired. And my wife said, you should go to this because this is pretty important, because we're a mixed race family from the UK who've moved to Huntington Woods because this is a real community. I attended the drag queen debate thing, and that was probably one of the circumstances were horrible, but one of the sort of outpouring of love that this community gives to people, because we accept people of diverse backgrounds and we try and include them in this community. So for that reason, I think the work has already started in this community, and if you have a commission to help push forward and promote this community outside of just our little woods, we should start doing that. I work for a company which is a global company as well. I do diversity. I'm a senior lawyer. I work on diversity inclusion. I've sent 2 of our lawyers to a Women in Power and Law event. They're flying off today. And it's important that we start. And every time we just, well, let's take a step back. Let's see what everybody else is doing. We don't do any work. Nothing gets done. We have people who are ready to start working. Let's just start. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you.
So I don't think I'm going to be as eloquent, but I want to echo the thought that we should just get going on it. I remember looking, I mean, Huntington Woods had been, at the forefront for a while now. I remember checking the charter and seeing that gender identity disorder discrimination was, for years now, maybe I looked in 2016 and saw that that was prohibited, where not many places in Michigan, at least at that time even, it was prohibited. So I know that we're moving forward and some laws have been passed, but I saw in the news today that Ferndale had already passed a law making it a crime to engage in, I can't remember what it was.
Conversion therapy.
Conversion therapy, that's right.
They were the second city in Michigan to do that.
Right.
We were
And-
the first.
Oh, we were the first, right. So,
They copied us, so did Ann Arbor, so did East Lansing.
Commissioner
I-
Rosell introduced that
so
legislation.
I didn't know that that was Huntington Woods first, but it just, I mean, that's one of the things that the committee could have recommended had you not, and I'm sure there are other things out there that, you know, a group of 11 or 8 or however many people it is, and I'm an applicant on that committee too, for the record, could start working towards. And I'd like to get going. So, thank you.
Can I get your name?
I'm sorry, Benjamin Chipper.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So I didn't expect to speak tonight. I was just coming for more information. But I'm Dr. Haley Thompson. I'm a professor in the School of Medicine at Wayne State University, and I'm also Associate Center Director for Community Outreach and Engagement for Karmanos Cancer Institute. So my work is all about diversity, inclusion, and engaging diverse communities across the state, at least when it comes to healthcare and cancer care. So I'm just going to be actually quite blunt. I've lived here for about almost 9 years, moving here from Brooklyn. And when I saw that there was such a committee that existed, I was shocked that, frankly, that there was even that kind of interest to kind of elevate it to a city commission. I think people live where they live for a reason. And this is a very insular, pretty homogeneous community. It was actually quite surprising and encouraging to see that there was such a commission kind of that was proposed and moving into action. So I guess I think that given the present goals of the committee, I think something like this is needed. If this was really what is reflecting the values and the desires of Huntington Woods citizens, that you want to be more welcoming, you want to be more inclusive, and you want to present Huntington Woods as a more open community, I think this is absolutely a step in the right direction, because that message is not necessarily getting communicated at all. And I will say also that I think this is really important for, frankly, the city's children. You know, my own children are, you know, they go with me to my work, and we spend much more time, in Detroit than we do even here in Huntington Woods. So they're exposed to different people of different backgrounds, whether it be racial, ethnic, people of different sexual orientations, gender identities. And I just wonder, like, other children in their class, I know they're not exposed to that. And that's not the world we live in. And are you really, or are we really preparing our children for the real world if we stay so insular and we don't make this a priority? So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, any comments or questions from the commission? Mayor Pro Tem Jenks?
Yeah, the comments that I want to support are what has been said. I would like to see a time limit for the city manager to come back with information, hopefully by the next regular commission meeting. So, because
I doubt it'll be done by November.
how long do you think it will take? Can we set a date?
I don't know that we need to set a date. I think,
Okay.
why don't we get an update as we're moving forward before we set a date. I mean, it is our intent. I know that a lot of the commissioners had some questions about the goals and the mission of it. We thought it was a little vague, and we were hoping to put the committee in place and that they would develop that. Now, we're just taking a little different approach to it and asking staff to do that, to start that process, so that the committee, when they hit the ground, they have a little more clarity as to what they're doing. They can certainly change it and go with it from there. But
It just sets expectations.
I think if you keep us updated on it, that's in my opinion.
I think a lot, how fast it'll go depends on our discussion we have tomorrow night and when the elections are for the Act 345 decision, whether or not we do any research, so there may be some big projects on the horizon.
The only concern I have is part of that would be a function of a diverse committee. Because I think, from my background of 25 years in civil rights as a research director and then community relations in Flint and Muskegon and the northern part of the state of Michigan, that this is quite different from most of the other committees because they're going to have to identify what are the barriers, and in addition to that, what are positive ways that we can bring people in, what are positive ways we can work with each other. And it would be nice for that committee to do that. I mean, with Mary Beth Crable here, the principal of Burton, she's got huge depth that surpasses everyone in the room as to what are the needs in the school and what are the reactions of the children. So, I mean, in some ways, especially since we have not made this a permanent committee, we have made it a short-term committee, it could do the research. Some of the people that are candidates that I've seen have unbelievable backgrounds. And you heard from a number of people here where that's their involvement. I think what we ought to do is ask the committee perhaps to form the committee and ask the committee to report back to us either monthly or bi-monthly where they're going. And the only way this committee would continue would be if we were comfortable with what their ultimate focus is. This is the first committee we've created that has a limited lifetime. And it's a relatively short period of time. I think it's 6 months.
You said 9.
9 months? That's still less than a year.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to be, nobody's against the concept. It was somewhat quick in the way it made its appearance here. We did not have any discussion about what it would be or what it would do or anything until we were basically here. And, there were some discussion about whether we want to go out to, events and advertise or hold the city out as a place, inclusionary place where people want to live. I mean, that's, as I pointed out at that meeting, Huntington Woods demographically is, in terms of the education level, is one of the highest education communities in the state. It's one of the, in terms of, voting demographics, very engaged community. There's nothing here that you basically, you see why people want to live here. And I do very much, I think it is good for children to be in a diverse environment. I think that absolutely. But as I pointed out at that meeting to Mr. Gold, when he was saying, well, why don't we have more, I forgot what it was, why aren't there more Indian doctors or somebody living in Huntington Woods? People can live where they want to live. You can't engineer that. If somebody wants to live in a community where whatever more, they feel more, God bless you. That's in the Constitution, they have the right to do that. I'm not sure how you engineer that or direct that. I'm not sure we want to do that. I'm not sure that's our charge. Okay? So I want to know where we're going here. And I'm not convinced at this point that I know that. So we just want to see what other communities have done. That's usually what we do almost always when we do stuff, is look to see what other communities have done, how they've dealt with this issue, what have they done. I'm not comfortable going ahead till I know where we're going and what the charge is gonna be. And, like I said, good intentions are all fine and good. The question is, where are we going? And I just think that slowing this down till we have a little bit more input, that nobody's suggesting that it be foreclosed or closed out. We're not. We just want to know a little bit more about where we're going. And that does not preclude interested citizens from doing whatever they want to do on their own. But I'm not comfortable going forward till I know where I'm going.
Mr. Mayor, I want to thank the folks who spoke tonight. I certainly appreciate their comments. You know, I was not at the meeting when this was brought up and when it was in the packet. You know, I called the city manager and said, look, you know, I'm going to miss this meeting. I'm out of state. Can we hold off on this? And, you know, I was told, no, they're having an event. This is something, you know, that they want to do right now. And I felt it was rushed. I had questions at the time. And, you know, because I couldn't attend that meeting, this is a community that's had a history of recognizing diversity and inclusion. We were one of the first with the human rights ordinance that was challenged and put before the voters and passed. We were the first in the state to ban conversion therapy. We made national news over that. We accepted drag queen story time as a thing that we felt if parents wanted to bring their children to and to take part in, that we recognized that folks have a right to do that, and it was a positive thing. And so, you know, we sort of have a history here of being, you know, inclusive and recognizing diversity. And I just think we need to, I had questions then. I specifically asked, but I was told they're having an event. They want to do this right now. And I think we need to evaluate it. I mean, we've never, in the time I've been on here, just thrown together a committee, you know, so quickly without having all of these things that we want done, you know, ahead of time. So I think, as Commissioner Olsman indicated, we're going to put the brakes on it, take a look at it, see what the charge is going to be, see what we want the goals and objectives to be, and then we'll revisit it. And you know, it's a priority, but again, we have one city manager. It's put up against a lot of other priorities, long-range budget, the sewer thing. So it's something we're going to get to. I would encourage the folks to continue to work together on things they can do as a group. And then when you report back to us on this, we'll you know, be ready to address it then. So those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to recognize and appreciate what you have all said tonight. I think it's great. We are supportive of what you are trying to do, but I agree with Commissioner Olsman and Roselle and the mayor that we need to get this right. So that's why we want to make sure that we have the right staff, that we have the right support, so that you can accomplish some of the things that you talked about tonight and more. And what I would love to see is that we look through the lens of diversity and inclusion and equity through all of our committees, not just one. So let's take a look, let's do this right, let's make sure we have a pathway, a clear mission, and a way to do it with the proper support system so that we can get this right. So we are not by any means saying, you know, that this is done. We're just saying, let's take a breath here and make sure that we have our house in order so that we can do this the way that you all want to make happen.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Item number 11, lead and copper rule testing.
Yes, I have a PowerPoint that will help. I wanted to bring the commission up to date on the lead and copper rule testing, how we got here, where we are, and then where we'll be going. So the Michigan Safe Drinking Water Act was enacted in 1976 to protect the public health. It has been amended over time, but it was amended again in 2018 to add more stringent testing specifically for lead and copper. The first set of tests under these new rules were taken in the city in July of 2019. It's important for residents in the commission to understand that there's been no change to our water supply, but the sampling process did change. And we do annually put out an annual report on water quality, and that is available on our website. And it has information about the latest lead and copper testing that we did prior to these new rules being implemented. So EGLE, formerly MDEQ, has now designated tiers for determining what homes to test. Now, water for testing must come from buildings with lead service lines or lead pipes before sampling buildings with different kinds of service lines or plumbing materials. The service line is the pipe that carries the water from the city main into the home, and they can be made out of plastic, copper, galvanized metal, or lead. And this is a diagram of the water main underneath the street, and then there's a stop box in between the main and the house, and then it travels on into the house, and that line is called a water lead. So we have about 2,600 homes in Huntington Woods. We believe there are 40 homes that have lead service lines. Where we got this information are the original records when homes were built and they tapped into the water system. They wrote down on that form what the material was that service line was made out of. As part of the new legislation, we are going to have to do a complete inventory. This is, this is accurate information, but we have to go through and do a complete check to verify that that is correct. And to do that, the DPW is going to have to go into every single home, to all 2,600 of them, and check to see what material that service line is made out of. And if for some reason they can't get into a home, then they're going to have to dig it up at the stop box and see what it is made of. So it's going to be quite a process. The prior rule, before these new ones went into effect, we had to test 5 homes every 2 years for lead and copper. The new rule requires 20 homes with lead service lines be tested annually. And the testing protocol was also changed, so now we take a first liter of water and a 5th liter of water, and an action level of 15 parts per billion was set. This is a diagram of what's different with the testing process. So again, water samples at buildings with lead service lines have to be tested, and we are collecting more water and measuring, testing the 1st and the 5th liter. We do that so that we can see what water that is sitting in the pipes, what that is out past the house. All right, so any test that exceeds 15 parts per billion for lead is considered over the action level. That action level is dropping to 12 parts per billion in 2025. We did have 2 homes out of the 20 that exceeded that action level. One came in at 26 parts per billion and one at 47 parts per billion. It's important to understand that that action level is not a health-based standard, but triggers a call to action. No homes exceeded the action level for copper, and having homes over that action level is not considered a violation of the Safe Drinking Water Act. So we have sent the test results to EGLE, and we are waiting for them to contact us. Once we do, we are required to notify those 2 property owners of the test results. We have to do it within 30 days. That's already been completed. We will be sending out a public advisory, a template that has been formulated by EGLE. And then there also needs to be an extensive public education campaign. And because of those two readings that were over the action level, instead of testing annually, we're going to be testing every 6 months. And instead of testing or sampling at 20 homes, we're going to have to double that. So we're going to have to find 40 homes to do testing for the lead and copper. And then, as I had mentioned earlier, we are going to do an inventory of the entire city. It has to be done by 2025 to determine exactly what the material is of all those service lines. So this is a diagram that shows what's new before, we have an idea from our cards what homes have lead, but we're going to be able to verify that with home-to-home checks in the next 5 years. So the next steps, again, we're waiting for the Eagle confirmation of our test results and instructions for the public advisory and the public education campaign. A whole house filter has been installed at the 2 homes by the Department of Public Works, and we are obtaining bids to have those lead service lines replaced. It will be at the city's cost. Even those homes that haven't exceeded the lead level, we are going to be required to replace those. We have to do a minimum of 7% of the lines per year and have all of them completed within 20 years. So again, this is just a diagram showing that it's our responsibility to replace the entire line. It used to be the homeowners could voluntarily replace it if they wanted to, but now it's mandatory, city's responsibility, and we cannot do partial line replacements. The entire line needs to be replaced. And then some information about lead. Lead is, no level of lead in the blood is safe. It is a irreversible neurotoxin, can have lifelong multi-generational impacts. Health effects from acute to chronic exposures. The biggest concern is young children and infants who absorb more lead than the average adult. And health effects in children include impaired mental development, IQ deficits, shorter attention spans, low birth weight. So this is getting a lot of attention from the state. The lead can enter the drinking water when it comes into come into contact with pipes, solder, and fixtures that contain lead. So it can either come in through the lead service line, or there could be individual fixtures in homes that have lead in them as well. So we are recommending that homeowners check to see if their water service line is lead, since that's the most prevalent source of lead in drinking water. So this is information that will be going out once we're contacted by Eagle. This is a way to check to see what your service line material is made out of. If it's lead, a magnet will not cling to it. If it's galvanized metal, a magnet will cling to it. Then there's copper, which is the color of a penny, and then also plastic, which is a white rigid pipe. And any homeowner that wants help or isn't sure what their material is, they can call the DPW, make an appointment, and we'll be happy to go out there and perform this test for them. So also part of the public education campaign are going to be actions to reduce lead exposure, because again, even if you don't have the lead in your service line, it could be in your faucets, your solder, or some of your other fixtures. We have recommendations to run your water for at least 5 minutes if you do have a lead service line, or until water runs cold for non-lead service lines. Consider using a filter to reduce lead. The Michigan Department of Health recommends any household with an infant, young child, or pregnant woman use a certified lead filter. Use cold water for drinking, cooking, or preparing baby formula. Do not boil water, as boiling will not reduce the amount of lead in the water, and clean your faucet aerator occasionally to remove trapped debris. So, again, we haven't sent out the advisory, we haven't done the public education yet, but anybody that is interested in more information can contact the Department of Public Works if you want to have somebody check your service line to see what that material is. We also can make available testing. If you have a lead service line, You can make arrangements for the DPW to come out and test the water. There's a $23 charge to have that sample processed. I'd encourage people to sign up for our e-newsletter at our website, because we'll be putting out the advisory, and the education material will be distributed that way. And then anybody that has any questions on the entire process, the lead copper rules, what's different, what's changed and what's coming, feel free to give me a call or to email me.
Do we know, for example, are the lead pipes more of a problem in houses built before a certain year?
Before the 1960s.
Yeah, lead solder was banned in 1985. So they still use lead solder, 50/50 lead tin up until 85. So here's just, I'll show you if you just want to kind of look, if you want to turn.
What's the
lights on.
test?
But this is what they, this is
What's the
actual
test
lead.
entail, Rocco? What are the, when they pay the $23, we
There's just for
sample
lead.
the water?
So what it's called an investigative test, and that's all they test for is lead. Of course, the more elements you test for, the higher the cost. But the
This one
that-
is lead.
That's lead. You can see you scratch it and it turns up. But the test, it's just a smaller bottle, and they strictly test for lead.
I'm curious, so, but you're talking about copper too, right? So
Yes.
So there's an
Yeah.
issue with potentially copper leaching into the water?
Or the fixtures, or any of the above. I mean, there prior to 1985, there was lead in a lot of other things besides just a pipe.
Right.
The solders and other. But majority, or most of the copper lines will not,
You won't have any issue with that?
There's not enough
Okay,
lead in there.
yeah. So my house
You'll
is,
find those below, they'll have a below 1 million.
so my house was built in 1955. I happened to personally see my water service
Yes.
lead recently in a trench as my sewer line was replaced from the house to the sidewalk. That was not fun, but I have a copper line. I
Yeah.
did learn that.
Yeah, a lot of people, I mean, if they know where their water meter is, they can.
You can look and see,
go look
yeah.
or just
You don't have to dig up your whole
Yeah,
front
scratch where
yard.
the penny. So, what the
Rocco.
so the cards that were pulled, tap cards, when the services were done, after 1985, the Safe Water Drinking Act, all our records show about 86, 85, and 86, the city was redone and checked. So of those, we know of around 39 to 40, but, it's 30-some years ago. It may be less. Some people may have done a reconstruct, changed it then. So hopefully it's less than what we know of.
When you did your testing, this testing that's done, is it specific to the 39 to 40 homes that
We had
know
to
of?
ask those first. We only got 18 people out of 20.
So you asked, so.
We asked all of them. We sent
And
a
some
letter
people
to
said,
them.
no, you aren't coming
Some
in, we're not
didn't,
interested
yeah.
in having you do that.
Right.
But others said, come in and
Yes.
you test it. So the ones that said come in and you tested, 2 of those were significantly higher according to
Yes,
what we just
but then if
saw.
you look at the fifth draw, they're nil. So it's got to tell me, what it tells me, it could be in the home,
With an old fixture
Yes.
or some pipe that's soldered in the basement somewhere.
So it goes from high to
Sure.
0. So after the fifth draw,
So
most of the homes.
if
are that
it's,
way.
oh, sorry.
I was just going to, just one more question. So you're not randomly drawing other known copper leads?
And we had to do tier 1, which is lead.
Okay, so
We had to
that's
do
the
those,
sole
that's right.
focus. And that will be the sole focus every 6 months going forward?
Yes. So I want to verify that those 39 are all lead. If we can't get in the house, we'll have to dig outside first and find those.
So,
And then we'll start narrowing down our.
so you installed the whole house filter
Mm-hmm.
at some point, and,
Right after the meter, we did it.
okay, and
So any faucet they use,
that's
that
not going to
water's
correct
been.
it? It's going to have lead in it still?
Well, no, not from our source.
Right, yeah, right, not from
Right.
the pipe, but if they have a fixture in the kitchen or the bathroom that's
It's
got lead in
possible.
it, it's still gonna come through, because the filter's filtering the water coming into
Correct.
the house, right?
Correct.
So what is the plan? I saw the 7% per year, and we have until 20, some
20, yeah, you have 20
2040s.
years, under 20,
Yeah,
20
way
or
in the
under.
future. Is the goal to replace these lead service leads or is the goal to install these whole house filters and punt it to sometime in the future?
I would like to
replace
do
the
them all
service?
within 4 years. I'd like to do, if there's 40, do 10 a year and be done. Then with lead-free. I mean, that would be very proactive, but of course the cost.
Using an outside contractor.
Yeah, and I did get prices on those two homes, and they both are $33,325. So you times that by 40 homes, that's quite a bit of money. It's $130,000.
What's the cost of a commercial filter?
About what was that, 300, Kevin? 250, but then you have, yeah, so then you have $45 every 3 months for a filter. So it is less.
But the filter only filters from the service line. So like Joe said, if it's in the house, there's a false sense of, I'm good.
Yeah, but
right?
the chances of that, majority of lead's gone. So coming into the house is lead-free. The homeowner then can put a filter at every faucet also.
And are we telling the homeowners, you still need to check the rest of your home?
Because they had the test done.
Yeah, they had a test done, so we retested, and we haven't got those back yet, but that's as far as we can do. We're doing
And-
everything we can.
Who does the?
Paragon in Livonia,
It's $23.
yes.
And so what does the resident do? Bring?
So they can call.
Or?
Yeah,
we
call,
bring?
pay for the kit down here, bring the receipt, set up a time and date, and we'll come and retest. And that tests only for lead, not copper, because we had no copper issues.
Of the 18 homes that did not meet the threshold, were there any lead below the threshold?
All but 2. There was only 2 that were above.
But I'm saying the threshold is 12 parts per billion?
15.
15? Were there any that were 10, that were 7, that were 1?
Yeah.
In my opinion, our goal is to get to 0. And I know, right? But the homeowners know and understand this.
Well, we will eventually, when we replace the lines.
Yeah.
It's a matter of,
But after the testing was done,
Yeah, they got the results. Everybody got the results.
I think there needs to be a real proactive education on our part as local government.
Yeah, we have that.
And I see that it's in the
Yeah,
plans, but whatever the state is requiring, I would like us to go above and beyond and get this information into the hands of the homeowners so that they're educated and knowledgeable. I was not knowledgeable. I still am not. I'm still learning. I saw the results.
My issue is that you've got to make sure you tell other residents that if they have a copper line, they are safe. You know, the panic is, oh my God, there's lead in the water, and that's not the issue. It's only the homes with lead services that be tested, and only 2 of those came in high.
Right.
The water coming in from Detroit, 0 lead. There's no lead in the water. So people don't understand that when they're here, oh my God, we have lead. Water coming in is 0 lead.
Right.
So that's got to be,
I think
let the other people know, because some of the elderlies, they hear that.
Yeah.
And oh my God, Huntington has lead. Well, no, we don't.
Right.
We don't have lead.
But it's that education, that information that we
Yes.
need to empower them so that they understand their situation. While they might not have the service line issue, it could be somewhere else in the system. So,
But then again, also when people purchase house, that's in the disclosure also. You know if you got lead or not when you buy the house. So you bought the house knowing it was lead.
right.
And up until this point, they've been able to replace the line themselves if they opted.
If they chose, yeah, if they
chose to
followed.
do so.
Right.
But now the state has decided to put the taxpayers on the hook to replace those
Right.
lead
And that,
lines.
so the main technique of replacing a line is going into the owner's basement, drilling into the wall, and it's called a thumper, a hammer. It's about 4 feet long, and it's about 2 inches round, and it hydraulic in air, and it beats it in, it pounds it. So the problem you might run into next spring, I'm sorry. So let's say the sewer backs up. Well, it never happened till you came in and started pounding. So there's going to have to be some waiver written in, because that's everybody's, what they're thinking as far as soccer, like what happens down the road after we replace the line. There's a crack, there's a leak,
Well, that's my question too. It was gonna be for Carol. So if there are people who won't even let us in to
Right.
test the water, how are we supposed to go into their home to replace the lead?
And Eagle understands that. You can make all the attempts,
I don't
if
know
they
that
don't
we
let
can-
you
yeah,
in,
we can't
then
just
then
like-
they
we
just
can't, like,
don't let you in.
trespass.
No, but we could,
Write 'em a
if it
letter
got
and tell
down,
'em.
we could get an administrative search warrant. if
Well,
we
they
did something like
suggest
that.
shutting the water off.
Last ones.
Shutting the
Eagle,
water off?
That's Eagle's point, shut the
That would
water off.
definitely get their
Till they let you
Yeah,
in.
But,
would get there.
That would.
I mean, you can save the ones that won't allow entry
Yeah.
till the end.
But the ones that won't let you, they suggest that finally you just shut your water off. And of course, that'll get their attention, but.
We'll cross that bridge.
Right. So in the meantime, the two that are high, we can replace those. But there's got to be word in there that, the contractor, we're not like, we'll replace it. And then after they're home, so.
So how are we gonna budget this? Rocco has kind of floated a 10-year plan or 4-year plan.
So-
How are we gonna finance?
Tim suggested that, and I spoke with Soccer as a whole, because we get our water from Soccer, that why don't we, as a whole, put this out to bid? You get a better price, so, now we know we have 40, Berkeley has 85, they've got 500. The contractor knows in 20 years, he's got all this work. You may get somebody comes in there fairly decent at 3,000, say, or 2,500 a home. And then you go ahead and pick and choose, say, hey, at 2,500, I can do X amount this year. The thing is, the faster you get it done, then you're over this lead and copper, because you're not a tier 1 city anymore. So, yes.
Rocco, do the 40 homes that had lead know that they had?
Yeah, everybody that we know of from the cards that had lead, we sent them a notice to be tested. We only heard back from 18. Now, after this goes out, I'm sure they'll be more willing to get tested. And that's good for us, because we're going to have to do it. So if you can't find enough, we're supposed to test 20 at tier 1. If you can't, then you note that and you move on to your tier 2s. So they understand if there's some people that are never going to let you in to get tested.
Amy, is there any chance that the slide presentation can be put up on the website?
Oh, it's a great idea.
It'll give people a little bit of a.
Yeah, and you mentioned an open house if you want.
Yes.
And that'd be great. You can show them some samples and hand them out. Eagle's got a lot of stuff online, but if you can print them up and hand it to them and kind of tell them this is what it is. And if you looked at Consumer Confidence Report, we have 0 lead coming into the city.
So the 40 homes that we reached out to, we heard back from 18.
Yes.
We sent like a first-class letter, like a first-class mail, we mailed them a
We
letter.
mailed them a letter, yeah.
I'm just wondering if maybe we should follow up with like a certified mailing or a door hanger or something, and maybe they saw something from the city and figured, oh, it's probably junk and threw it away. I just feel like this is so important that some folks may not have realized that when they signed their buyer's seller's disclosure that they had a lead lead. They may or may not, and I just think if we send something certified, hang something on the door, just to cover us, I would.
Oh, no doubt.
A little better.
But Kevin put one in, a lady who was very reluctant and let us in, and very nervous and upset. And we took the samples and we offered to put a filter in. So Kevin had to come back that night to put it in because we couldn't get in during the day. And he was walking up the driveway and says, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" He had an appointment at 8 o'clock and he had his vest on, so, let him in, lock the door, and so you're going to get people like that, but you can do what you can do, as much as you can do.
From campaigning door to door, we're somewhat familiar with that.
Yeah. And so some of this testing is, of course, going to have to be done on Saturdays.
He's there to check the lead in there.
Right.
No, but
Good first one.
But we talked about having to do it some on Saturdays and Sundays to get in these homes.
Yeah.
Of course, but if we can send out a campaign, let some people know, they can test it themselves. If you have somebody that's willing to go ahead and look.
I had 2 or at least 3 residents ask me, is this a problem? Yeah, I mean, because all you do now is just have to hear the word lead.
Yeah, no, right.
And right away, it's like, oh my God,
Right. Yeah, so if they don't have lead, and like I said, out of the 18, 16 passed, we're fine. And some were undetectable levels.
But they passed under the threshold. I still would
But
want
some
to
are
know.
even way below, it's undetectable, it's below one
Right.
part.
Okay.
So a lot of those, the first
But
draw
I-
was below one
I
part.
think that information would be helpful.
yeah.
And I would suggest that we do an open house because people are asking questions. And do
Yeah.
you feel adequately supported and staffed to be able to take on all of this?
Not right.
What do you mean? Because they're, I mean,
I mean,
Because you're going to get an influx of people asking, questions and wanting,
Oh, no, we're
support
already,
to come
we're
over.
already getting and testing,
Okay.
and Kevin's been back, this is his second test.
Okay.
So Kevin's been doing a great job with that, and he's been my lead person on it. So pretty much today is all about lead, and every day, so
We do
Kevin's
know
been doing
that-
a good job.
that from what Birmingham is going through, that we are going to be coordinating with the health department and doing open
Yes.
houses. So
Yeah.
there is going to be information.
And the health department was very helpful also. I talked to him several times and about getting what type of filter, what does it have to meet, and all of the above, and she was very helpful. Said, call anytime, or if the residents need, call her. And that's not a bad idea, if they're, and that's what I've told Tara, if they don't like what we hear, call the health department, They can at least, now they're getting it from a second source, and they're saying, listen, this is what it is, so.
I think we need
If
to.
we do have an open house,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be a bad idea to
I
have
think we need to
somebody.
ramp up on our communications. In
Yeah.
addition to this, I suggest that we put in all of the EGLES information, and they had some really good fact sheets. University of Michigan has also put together some information.
Yeah, so Eagle's gonna let us, they have to see what we're gonna put out.
Yeah,
And they have a template, we can change it, but they have to approve it.
okay,
So when that comes through, and they're overwhelmed right now. Everything had to be put in October 6th, so they're just overwhelmed with every community. I know we tested, so let's say we tested 20, we had 2. Pleasant Ridge did 10, they had 1. Berkeley 30, they had 3. Oak Park had 10.
but that doesn't
30.
preclude us from sending this out in an email, right, with
No,
links?
no, we already sent that out, but we need to have Eagle approve what we're gonna send out. We have to wait for them to get a hold of us on the formal one.
The other issue too is I did get a call from a resident, but they said, well, I have a copper lead, and I said, oh, you're fine then, this is really, but they said, no, the copper could be a problem too, do I need to get my home tested, for copper? And so I think because this is, lead and copper rule, that there's some confusion as to, if people with copper lines are at any potential risk, and we need to get information out, on that, the difference
and
between lead and copper,
Yeah,
what
so,
we're testing.
yeah, so they lump those two together, because some communities, the acidity of the water can leach the copper. Great Lakes Water has a great control with adding phosphates and reduction in the copper. So ours is we've never had a copper over, nobody has.
We need to get that.
You need to get that out,
Right.
nobody has ever here.
That's good.
From the 130-some communities from Detroit has had an elevated level of copper.
That's good.
Yeah, so I've reached out to our county commissioner as well as our state senator. Senator Moss has some background on this, and so I'm trying to see if there are other, so we're not duplicating efforts, but also staying on top of it. I don't want to wait to communicate with our residents to empower them with this information so that they can be aware and diligent about checking their own homes, not just the service line. So I just want people to know that we're very aware of this, and this is a priority. And I know you're working hard on it, but I would really push us to get this information so that we're transparent and getting the communications out and giving them
And
the
homeowners, I mean,
resources.
it's simple as getting a filter. I mean, there's commercials every hour about it on TV.
You don't wanna understate the issue, you wanna overstate the issue, you wanna adequately state.
Yeah,
the issue.
adequate. Give them the proper information, and this is
people,
what it is,
Like
and-
Michelle said,
right,
let them be
Yeah.
fully informed and armed with the right information.
yeah. And I don't know,
You
yeah,
don't wanna promote an unnecessary, state of unease about a problem.
because it's out there already.
Right.
Right.
And like I said, go ahead, say the word Flint, say the word
Yeah.
lead in Michigan, what's the first thing you think? Oh, Flint, you
Yeah.
know?
No doubt, and Flint was the start of all of this.
Sure.
It's unfortunate, because the water is good
Well,
quality that's
yeah,
here.
and let's
We do
remember
have good
why,
quality
because
water.
Because poor governmental decision-making is what led to that, so.
Yeah,
no
so-
pun intended.
No, and it's understandable, right, you hear lead.
And I love that you have a 4-year plan, but again, make that decision with the homeowner. I wouldn't want to wait 4 years if I had
So-
an issue.
Before this came about, I did a water main project in Oak Park, and we knew there were 9 services on that line, and that's before they said you had to pay it. So what we did, put out to them, gave them a 10-year interest-free loan, and I think they were at $2,800 each. So out of 9 people, 3 took the loan and had it replaced. So I think there's other options out there if we can't pay for it right off the get-go, but, you know, if somebody's that, jump on it, but otherwise the cost of, Tim, you're gonna write the check tomorrow, correct? Right. I'll get this bit out, but we're on top of it. We put the filter in within a couple of days right after, so we up and above what other communities did after. When I told people at soccer, they're like, "You did what?" You know, they couldn't believe it. They just told people filter to run it, but we went up and above, I thought, and added the filter. So, any other questions? Got a lot of answers. Yeah, but they can call us, and we've been on it. So.
Okay.
And real quick, if you look inside that lead pipe, you can see the white, which is the coating, protective coating. So with Flint, they didn't add phosphate, and they had high acidity, and it wore that coating out. And that's what happened, it leached. So as long as that has it and you run the water, you're pretty safe. You know, like I said, a couple that were high, those were the first draw, which tells me it's inside fixtures, yeah. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other comments or questions on the report? Moving on to item number 12, reports and minutes. We have 3 sets of reports or minutes. Do we have a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Warrant number 356, do we have a motion to approve subject to full audit?
So move.
Mr. Mayor, just one thing about
We have a second before we can discuss?
Second.
Thank you.
Nothing to discuss, but in that warrant, just being sensitive to the issue, there's a return of bond for a 2-year construction project on our house, so I don't want anybody to say, I don't even really know what it means. So I just is it important for me, Ms. Rosati? Bring it, put it out there.
We know you're not getting more than your $1 a year.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. City managers report.
Yep, got a couple of events coming up. Tomorrow at the Gillum Recreation Center, there is a Here's to Your Better Health Fair and Expo. It's 10 to noon tomorrow. It is aimed at our older residents, and there's going to be free information, vendors, and you can also get your flu shot there. Tomorrow evening, we're going to have the follow-up study session to continue talking about the recommendations from the Long Range Budget Study Committee, so that will be tonight at 7. Then a new event coming up on Saturday the 19th, Community Planting Day in Scotia Park. That'll be underway from 10 in the morning to 2 o'clock at night. Bring your own shovel, trowel, and help plant the park with shrubs, perennials, and bulbs. They are going to have refreshments, so if you could let the Recreation Department know if you plan to attend, they can bring enough refreshments. And then our semi-annual electronics drop-off and shredding event, it will be on Sunday the 20th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the DPW.
Are there any questions of the city manager? Now moving on to commissioners' remarks. Mayor Pro Tem Jenks.
The city will have bike lights, headlamps, and other materials to make your nighttime biking safer as part of SEMCOG's Walk, Bike, Drive, Safe, Traffic Safety Education, probably next Monday. There is no charge, but it's first come, first serve. Public safety will give you reflective tape.
Actually, we're all out.
That is no, okay, so we're not going to replace it. All right. Please ride safely and observe traffic safety rules, stopping at stop signs and yielding at yield signs. The other thing is there's a blood drive. Check with the library Monday, October 21st from 1 to 7 p.m. The Red Cross is looking for donors. It's at the Huntington Woods Library.
Thank you. Commissioner Rozell?
I'm just glad, Mr. Mayor, that this will be the last commissioner comments that we'll have on the agenda. Thank you very much. And I know that I will never let you live down that you voted to keep them on the agenda, Mr. Mayor. I will remember that.
So noted. Commissioner Elder?
No comments.
Commissioner Olson, all right. I just want to let everyone know that the Berkeley Area Chamber of Commerce is hosting State of the Cities on October 25th, 2019 at 8 a.m. at Farina's Banquet Center. I'd invite all the commission to attend. We get a State of the City from the mayor of the city of Berkeley, as well as the mayor of the city of Huntington Woods, the Berkeley School District, and the Berkeley DDA. So it's a couple hours, and you get a good idea of what's going on in our community and with our neighbors. I'll let the city manager know if you're interested in attending. With that, meeting adjourned. Right? I have to have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
If you want to move.
Aye.
Aye.